number one, has it always been this way? I mean, I only started paying attention to this stuff in the late 90s. Was there a period in history when our institutions did a much better job of thinking long term? And if so, how do we get back to that? If not, what do you have any suggestions? Is there something that we should be doing differently to get our institutions to start thinking more long term and about future generations?
Well, you're right. We are, as a nation, short-term thinking is now the norm rather than the exception. It has always been that way to some extent, but we understood that and we put boundaries around ourselves. As bad as it was, and the gold standard had its negative elements, the gold standard was there to control our habits of printing money freely and causing inflation. But we gave that up. We thought, well, we'll put it in the hands of these experts and they'll do it for us. But the political pressure on me first carries the day. And I understand I save, you save, but think about it in a different context. I've given many speeches to groups, agricultural groups, for example, and we'll agree, oh, the deficit has to be taken care of. We've got to be more responsible. And I'll say, fine, we've got to reduce the amount of subsidies for agriculture. And I get an immediate blowback. Oh, you can't do that. We need it. I'll go to an investment group of retirees, 65, 66. And they'll say, yes, we've got to get the deficit under control. This is terrible. And I'll say, yes, we need to move the retirement age to age 70. And I'll get immediate blowback because it affects me. And I will do the same with the energy industry, with the housing industry. So it's that inability to say, we're going to have a shared sacrifice. And that's where leadership comes in. When we have decided as a nation with our leaders in Congress and in the executive branch, yes, we have an issue. Yes, we need to take care of it. And yes, we have to have shared sacrifice. So we're going to look at all expenditures. We're going to look at all taxes. And we're going to get this thing brought under control gradually. We don't have to strangle ourselves. All we have to do, it's a big all, is we have to begin to spend less, borrow less, to where we are increasing our debt at a much slower pace than our real gross domestic product, our real national income is increasing. Then over time, we reduce that as a percent. That means we have more funds for private investment, for innovation, for providing enough, not more than we can afford, but enough for Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. Only when we make those hard choices as a nation, and our leadership takes us that way, will we begin to address this problem systematically and for the long term. Otherwise, eventually we will print more money, I can assure you. We will have more inflation because that's the only way you reduce the relative size of the government debt is to devalue the debt by inflation. And we undermine our social fabric because it will have winners and losers, big time, and conflict. And only when our leadership understands that and carries it forward, and only when the American people are convinced that they are not the only ones sacrificing, like you say, I'm saving, but who isn't? Those are the hard points that lie ahead for us, or we have a very likelihood of continued inflation, both asset and price, in the long term.